This is the 20th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, AFTCO, Pro Guide Batteries, Spro, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Back in the studio for the near foreseeable future. Did a little testing with the mobile studio this past week. Was actually live at the OBT media event, and the reason we didn't have a show is I had some technical issues there, but what I'm working towards is similar to what we had at the Bass Cat Owners Tournament when we had Rick Pierce and a number of guests on, to where I can actually take the show on the road with studio quality. So it's been an absolutely crazy month of May, kicking it off with that open there on Logan Martin, and then flew to St. Jude in Minnesota, and then back to Alabama, and then drove home for 2 days, and then drove to Lake Hartwell out in South Carolina for a media event. And now I'm back in studio. We got an incredible lineup of guests this week. Ben Milliken today, halfway, I guess slightly over halfway, 5 events in, 4 events to go. His Elite Series campaign, a dude who's tearing it up on the West Coast, will be on tomorrow. That is Kurt Dove, fresh off of a 3rd place finish in a tournament that Joe Arube Jr. won on Lake Havasu, the Lake Havasu Open. We'll talk more about that. Guys, like the second half of the show, after we get Ben on, we have heavy hitters going on. KVD's last tournament, a Toyota Series on Lake Eufaula that Chris Jones won. It was his 5th win with MLF. We had the NPFL on Lake Hartwell. We had that one bass on Lake Havasu, and then we haven't even touched on the MLF Invitationals that just took place at Eufaula, Alabama. So a lot of fishing content to get to, and a guy who knows all about fishing content is the one and only Ben Milliken. Ben, thanks for jumping on BTL again. It's been a while.
It's been a while, man. It's crazy. It seems like I haven't talked to you forever after coming on every episode after the Opens last year. So I'm excited to kind of dive into it.
It is. We did that every episode of the Opens, which I really liked, diving into that and kind of getting into the mindset. But when that was on, it's hard to believe. And we were talking about this in just the 2 minutes before the show started. Like, you're only 15 events into your Bassmaster career, but it seems like you've done and lived a lifetime of experiences in the past year and a half. Just from the outside, is that kind of how it feels like in the Ben Milliken camp?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everyone talks about how the sport's such a roller coaster of emotions and travel and everything, but we've traveled all over the country. We've finished, we've won, made the Classic, top 10 at both levels, the Opens and the Elite Series. We finished almost dead last a few times, and everything in between, on all different types of fisheries, all different types of baits, all different types of, having a baby last year during the open season, the middle of the season, traveling the whole family around. So yeah, man, it's been a lot. It's only been like 15 months since the Open started last year. It's crazy.
So the first one would have been the Lake Eufaula, Alabama. I'm on it. March. No, it's been like 14 months. Yeah. March 2nd through 4th is where you kick things off in Alabama. And then you had like a whole year to get ready because you won the next one. So you knew that you were going to be in the Classic for an entire year. And then it came down to the last tournament, basically the last day, qualifying for the Elite Series. And then you went back to back and were leading the Angler of the Year in the Elite Series after the first 2 events. And now you're fighting for a Classic spot in the last 4 events.
It's crazy, man. I can't make it easy on myself, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all been. First of all, here's what we're going to do. I want to kind of go through the Elite Series season, similar to what we did a little bit in the Opens. And then there's this thing out there. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called social media, but it kind of gives everybody a platform and a voice to give feedback on their thoughts, which is, would you say it's fair to assume that's a double-edged sword?
You think so? Do people have negative thoughts on social media? I thought it was just, a place to go share great moments in your life. And there's probably no one complaining on there, is there? I've never checked it out.
No, so I posted, and I kind of took a cue from you when you posted the. Did you get in trouble for posting the angler update only email on social media?
No, I haven't heard
You
anything about that.
didn't get a call for that?
No, I'm
Okay.
surprised. But I
So
didn't post all of it. I just posted like the bottom half of it.
yeah, so you posted that. So what I wanted to do then in the second half of the interview is uh, go through some of your social media posts where you tackle some controversial subjects or issues that are going on in the industry today, and then I'll just see if you want to expand on any of those thoughts. Sound fair?
Yeah, well, let's pour some gas on it. Sounds good.
Okay, let's pour some gas on it. All right, let's start with the Elite Series season. What was it like going into Toledo Bend and Lake Fork? Did you feel like there was a lot of pressure on you knowing that those were wheelhouse events in a state that you now call home after moving from Nebraska, with so much expectation on you, especially with what you'd done at Toledo Bend in the Open the previous year?
Honestly, the pressure I felt was more on myself just to see if I could compete at that level. You never know when you step up to a new level, the top level of the sport, where you're going to stand in that crowd with this incredible field of anglers. So, I already feel like I proved myself last year in the opens and stuff. So it wasn't really that much pressure because they were in Texas, because I won at Toledo. Because I also think that I might have less experience on Toledo Bend than any other angler in the field, or at least like 95% of them. I probably have less time on the water than 95% of the guys in the Elite Series on Toledo, which is crazy. I've only been there like 2 days besides the Open last year. And then Fork, I mean, I didn't have a ton of experience there either, so I didn't really know what to expect, but I was hoping that they would set up, early pre-spawn, fish still out roaming around, still suspending fish and stuff like that. And it really did fall into that. And my game plan on both worked out really well.
Uh, what was the feedback like from the fans in the first two? I wasn't at either of those events, but it seemed like it was pretty chaotic at both the weigh-in and on the water from the MFers. The last time I think we've seen something like this was the KVD effect, and that was primarily before live. I was on the water covering every single event with Harold Allen, and I remember you always knew where KVD was on the lake when he moved, because it was literally KVD and then 100 boats behind him. Has the on the water and then the weigh in, especially in those first two, it seemed like there were just a ton of MFers at those events, even though you were a rookie and it was your first two events.
Yeah, the first two on the water were insane. Had a ton of people following. Everyone's been great following on the water, so I haven't had any issues with people burning stuff up or anything. But man, the freaking weigh-ins, and I don't know if I have any effect on the weigh-in crowd, but I seriously think each of those two events at Toledo and Fork have had legitimately more people than probably the last three tournaments combined. It was a madhouse. Like Toledo, I don't know if you remember how Toledo is set. You've been there a lot more than I
Oh yeah, I
have,
totaled a truck at Toledo Bend in the parking.
Exactly. There you go. There was literally like the fans had parked at Toledo at Cypress Bend all the way to the road where like the booth is where you check in. They parked
It's like a
just
mile.
in. Yeah, there's people like going like tilt it down, driving off the edge into the shoulder to park. It was insane how many people were at Toledo. It was a madhouse. I've never seen anything like it. But there was maybe as many people there as like almost the classic weigh-in, except they were outside and everywhere. It was nuts. And then Fork might have had as many people. The new facility at Fork is just massive. It's set up great. The last day we pulled the boats through, trailered away. We didn't really trailer it away because we couldn't take them in, but took your big fish in, whatever. But Fork was maybe equally as big and equally as many people. It was insane. Everything's bigger in Texas, they say, but like, dude, it was wild. I've never seen anything like it, and I didn't know if it was going to be like that every event, because it honestly drained me fishing 4 days, back-to-back tournaments, practice both days, and then, I mean, not to say that the crowd or the fans drain you or anything, but talking to people doing autographs and stuff for hours after each day in the weigh-in, dude, I was wiped out after those first two events, and I didn't know if it would be like that everywhere. And I'm not gonna say luckily, but it's not a terrible thing that it hasn't been quite as many people at the last three.
Did you feel nerves going into those first two to compete? Like, was there were you actually nervous going into them, or was it more of a, I mean, you have a little bit of bravado about you, so you have a, hey, now it's time for me to show these guys what I'm about, or was there some internal doubt in there? You talk about the field and how strong it is.
There was actually not many nerves. I didn't feel it
Really?
too much, honestly. I of course was, you're always nervous before you step up to a new level, but no, I really didn't feel that many nerves, and it was kind of the same with the classic too. Even on that stage, was not nervous at all. I'm not bragging or saying anything like that. I'm not going to lie and say I was crazy nervous, because I just didn't feel the nerves for those tournaments.
Did you feel like you had a target on your back with other competitors going into the season? And then did you feel like you had a target on your back after the first two events where you went 5th and 8th?
Didn't feel it going into the season too much. Again, I felt, kind of like I proved myself last year as the, dipshit social media guy that hopped into the top level or AAA level. But after the first two events, I think I hop in, and I'm a part of the group of anglers that kind of feels a target on their back at every event, every day. That is the younger, newer class. Of course, I can't really say I'm one of the younger guys. I'm like probably in the
literally
upper
the
half
oldest.
of the older guys.
You're literally
yeah, exactly.
the oldest rookie, Ben, by a lot.
Exactly.
All right, you mentioned it. Let's dive into that right now. The target on the back, the young rookie class, like no secret. It's been interesting for me on how I want to cover this. I know the Bill has covered it. I thought Bill Lowen did an excellent job on that episode. I've been a big fan of Bill Lowen. I will continue to be a big fan of Bill Lowen. I think if you listen to what was actually said in that, they were making sure that it was clearly not every single rookie. But okay, if you've been living under a rock, how has this developed this year? Because I think if you're on the inside, or if you follow this closely, there's clearly a rift between the old guard and the new guard. Is that a fair way to say it?
That's a fair way to say it. But I think we need to keep in mind that even though we have, platforms on social, channels on social media that try to perpetuate the negativity, like the one you just mentioned, that it's not everyone that is not a rookie versus everyone that's a rookie, or everyone that's not a rookie or a sophomore class versus the rookie and sophomore class, because it's not like that at all. The majority of the old guard, I guess, I don't think has any issue with the rookie class as a whole. And I think a lot of the guys, they just want what's right and what's fair and to follow the rules. And so at the same time, we are in a sport where, we've all come up through the freaking standing in the boat ramp parking lot banter, or the idea that if someone's dominating, that they're cheating, the idea that you have to earn your stripes, you have to earn the knowledge in the fishing community to be able to compete at the top level, and you got to pay your dues. And so there is that lazy hatred and ideas, maybe not hatred, but the lazy animosity towards people that they're not following the rules, or they're this gray area we keep hearing about, which I don't think is gray at all. There is gray area in fishing, but I don't think there's been any gray area so far this year. But I think it's easy when you're getting your ass kicked. I'm 34, like we just talked about. I'm the old man of the rookie class. I want to say, yeah, Trey's a freaking cheater. He's doing this wrong. He's doing this wrong. Mm-hmm. Every time I get my ass whooped, I finish 80th, 100th. My mind wants to go there, but I take some breaths and kind of understand what actually happened. And I look at the facts and what's happening on camera, and I watch them on live, getting a top 10 every single tournament. You get to watch them 4 days. You realize that that's just jealousy creeping into your head, and you got to get better. And that's where I'm at. I got to get better. So does everyone else if they want to compete with these guys.
Was it really, and I go back to your March 4th post here on Instagram, I'm just going to read a section of it. You kind of posted something that your friend, Captain Ron, posted, and there's a section that you wrote under here, and it says, this kind of where it really started. You said, I know myself and other young anglers in the field are feeling some serious animosity, and to be 100% honest, I give 0 Fs, just going to keep ripping. but I think it's very important to think about and remember. I got nothing respect but for the other guys, and I'm fortunate to compete against. That respect is gained from all the educational opportunities they provide and continue to provide. Was it really after that Century Belt beatdown on Lake Fork and the 130 pounds and so many guys on a traditional fishery that is power, where most of it was spinning rod and offshore, that it kind of, you think that was the tournament that kind of started this whole discussion inside the fishing community?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had the whole off season of forward-facing sonar hatred and the lazy idea that, it's going to take over. And I think we had the recency bias. Those first two events after that, it was like, oh my God, every tournament from here on out is going to be one on a jig head minnow, and we're not going to be able to compete if we weren't phenomenal at forward-facing sonar the last 5 years. And now we've seen, every tournament since then that being a part of it, forward-facing's barely played at all. I mean, you're going to say Corey Johnston won with it, of course, on perspective, but I think he would have won without it, or someone, or his brother, or one of them would have won in that pocket without it.
In a healthy mix.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't even, like, Murray, it barely played. I didn't scope hardly anything at Murray on it. I mean, you saw JT and Trey a little bit, but that was, I mean, once again, they would have caught most of those fish without it. The Classic, it didn't really play. Hamner, I guess, kind of wins partially with it, but the rest of the guys, not so much. The Florida events, it hardly played, besides the guys that went to Rodman and scoped around. And Fouts was really the only top 10 guy that went and did that. So, I mean, now we're 6 events in, kind of in the Classic, and it's only played those first 2. So, yeah, it probably did seem like, if you're over 30 years old and aren't staring at a screen every cast your entire rest of your fishing career, that you're going to be out of the sport in 2 years, but that's quickly proven itself not to be true at all.
All right. I don't know if I've heard anything where we talk specifically about what you think is going on, what should happen. Bassmaster, I had Gene Gilliland, who's on the technology committee. It's not tech, it's some other word. But talk about what Bass has done as far as, like, what do they know every single little thing that's on your boat? And I've heard they're like measuring stuff and want to know exactly what units, all the way down to the batteries. Like, have they gone over all of the boats with like a fine tooth comb this year to know what's on everyone's vessel?
Yeah, so just the start of the season, when we were doing like our, you got to do everything with the pictures of your wrap. You put the stickers on for Angler of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and then they kind of, you go at this U.S. Coast Guard check for your boat and everything at the first tournament, Toledo. Then we went through a station where they did write down the exact units that are on your boat, the transducers that are on your boat, and as I'm concerned, and this, I didn't hear this from Bass, but one big thing, through insurance purposes, they're trying to measure how high up your graphs are on your dash and on the front, because obviously you need to be able to see over the front of your bow to not hit things. And so I think next year there's going to be something just for safety purposes that says you can't have whatever your top unit is, a certain amount of space over the top of your deck, so you can see. Same with your console. Obviously you don't want your graphs up here, but they definitely did. Everyone that was on the tech committee, which are just, Bass employees, Davies on it, and several other guys are part of that as well. They talked about the meeting, what their role was in the group, and what they were going to look at each tournament. I think everybody that's in the top 10 at the end of each day, they're going around asking, what percentage of your fish did you catch using forward facing? What did you use it for? So all that being said, besides the legality of the insurance purposes of the safety issues of where your graphs are and being able to visually see around, myself, and I don't think any of the other anglers really know what's going to come of that data and how much it really matters or what it means. So,
okay. The beginning of the year, it was quite the task to put what you have, a 22 MBT up front and two 16s.
Yeah, a 16 Garmin and a 15 Apex. I actually switched it to a 12 Apex because the Apexes are huge out besides the screen.
The chatter is that something is coming down the pipeline. It went from nothing to potentially to something. You're an Elite Series angler, Ben. In 2025, when the first cast is made, what do you think the electronics limitations will be, if any? And then part B, in your opinion, what do you think they should be or shouldn't be?
I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a set number of inches you can have on your boat. The chatter has been 60 inches, I believe. I've heard from people. And then I think 2 forward-facing transducers wherever you want them on your boat is what I personally think it'll be. And so, I mean, to me, I'm honestly I'm kind of happy about it. I don't really like this arms race, especially as we're about to head north to the bumpy water. Um, it's become a hassle just to strap your stuff down, make sure things aren't broken, and just manage all of your equipment, manage your battery power going to what units. That's, to me, that's really the only thing that makes me want to limit any of it, is because it gets to the point where you have to have so much battery power. You have to have so many batteries to power these units and deal with them, having the opportunity to break off and more things going wrong. But as far as what I feel should be right in everything, I don't think personally at the top level of bass fishing that there should be any restriction on anything. Obviously I can sit here and say that I'm happy about it, that we're not going to be allowed to have 17 units on the front and at the console. But I think at the top level of the sport, we shouldn't have any restriction. I've heard several people, the reason for that is I hear several people say, we should have half the tournaments with it, half without. Or some people have said we should have the power hour where you can use it 1 hour of the day. I just want people to know how hard it is to catch fish these days and how much fishing has changed. If you're watching an Elite Series tournament where we go to Lake Fork after the lake's been piss pounded all winter by guys scoping, like the general public scoping or whatever other tournament series scoping, and the Elite Series guys aren't allowed to have it, that is not going to be an exciting event to watch or follow or be a competitor in. And I mean, just this idea that we're going to keep limiting it, and that's going to have some type of crazy effect is a little bit ridiculous to me. I've been vocal about, I don't understand the idea that watching an Elite Series tournament or any tournament with forward facing is boring. I think that, I think anglers and the media need to do a better job of, teaching and using that on the screen, the forward facing sonar. But there is, Lake Fork, I don't understand how you could watch that and be bored by watching Justin Hamner catch an 11-pounder and watch it eat a jerkbait, or what we were doing, with a minnow and stuff like that, and a jerkbait. If you're going to watch that and be bored and then think that if we didn't have live scope and it took 60 pounds to win that tournament, and watching, 12 fish catches on live the entire day because they're on a jig, that's going to be a lot more exciting, then I think you're crazy. And I understand how it can be monotonous when you go to Champlain and every single angler is doing the same thing, which they should be because they're trying to have a career and be successful. I understand how that could be tough to watch, but you also have to understand that that's very, very small percentage of the season. Very, very small percentage of fisheries are going to set up like that. So the idea that an angler, when you're looking at them, is doing this instead of doing that and watching live for 7 hours, if you can't understand that it's boring because it's boring to watch someone else fish for 7 hours, not because they're staring at the screen or if they're flipping a jig on the bank or if they're throwing at a dock or if they're casting back behind them at a Carolina rig or a minnow or whatever, then I can't help you. But it's people thinking that there's some secret cheating method that they don't have that these other guys are having, that are catching all these fish for them. That's what it is. It's not any type of reality of what's actually happening.
What percentage of people do you think, viewership wise, we're talking the average bass fishing Elite Series fan, are actually turning off their TVs because of it? What percent actually care about it, based on what you've seen? Like actual just kind of feedback that you've gotten percentage wise, like how much hate do you get versus how much keep doing you?
Yeah, I'd say probably like 2 to 5% of people hate it and turn it off, and the rest of them, I'd say probably, another 20% maybe don't like it, but they're gonna watch because 'cause they're fans of the sport, and then 75% of the people are gonna enjoy it and learn from it and like it and try to get more people involved. So,
Mhm.
I think it's gonna be that way if you're watching a baseball game or that has a, pitch time clock that's changing with the old guard, the new guard, or an NBA game with the three-point line. You're gonna have people that wanna turn it off and hate it no matter what, but it doesn't mean that it's the right or wrong thing.
I agree. I will say that in casual sports that I watch, NASCAR, motocross, bowling, like there's a bunch of stuff going on in all of these things as far as restrictions and what it was. And there's like a thing in bowling versus like a polyurethane ball versus another ball. And guys will make like side comments to guys who are using that type of ball, or when the two-handed bowling came in with Belmonte and all. But as the cat, like I don't care or know that any of that stuff is going on behind the scenes. Like I don't know about restrictor plates. I mean, I know it exists, but like it doesn't matter to me. Like I just want to watch the race or watch the bowling match. So I think it's easy to get caught up in the inner workings of it. But I mean, we're also on BTL here, which is hardcore, like all 360 plus people that are live right now and the thousands that'll watch this later. Most of those are hardcore guys that like follow inside, of the industry and know what's going on. So I think it's also a little bit of an echo chamber when it comes to that as well.
100%, definitely, and I think the problem is not forward-facing sonar or how old you are when you're casting out a fish. The problem is that we do not have a sport that is enjoyable, or I mean, unless you're super hardcore, you're a 5% person. We do
Mm-hmm.
not have a sport that's, good to consume on television. We do. Maybe it's not even great to consume in a 1 hour time frame, let alone a 4-day event. And so I mean, if we really want to take the sport to the next level, we want to grow the sport like everyone says, we want it to be a NASCAR, a golf, an individual sport that's on every weekend. It's something to do that needs to be changed with a format, that needs to be changed with, how it's presented and where it's
Well,
presented,
that's
as
where
opposed to,
personalities come out too. I mean, there's a lot of guys who've made their careers on the personalities because they understand how to make that content enjoyable and relate to the person through the TV screen.
Yeah, I've heard of those people before. Yeah.
You're one of them. Last question here, and then we'll move on. Is it a question? Is it how tournaments are being won or who's doing it? Think about that one. Has that also been, I think, a catalyst to this conversation as well? If there were other certain anglers that were doing it with the forward-facing sonar, do you think it would be more praised, widely accepted, and celebrated than it has been?
Yes. I I think if Koya wouldn't have had such a good season last year, I don't think that this would have all come about near the level of hatred towards forward facing that it has. And I mean, maybe some of that hatred is right, because maybe we shouldn't have an angler that has never been to the United States, never fishing of our lakes, be able to just come over and dominate. Maybe there shouldn't be a technology that allows that. But yeah, I think that they're absolute. It's not necessarily how it's being won; it's who it is. You start to see that even these guys at the old guard, we'll call them, talking about Trey. As soon as it comes out after the fork event, these last 3 events that he's done extremely well, and you start to see that, oh, he's not just catching them scoping. It's like, oh, well, he's doing well because he's running no wake zones, or he's fishing. He's living in a gray area. And that's what I'll dive into that a little bit too. The hatred towards the rookies, I'll just go out and say it, since everyone's afraid to say it on their podcasts and their little, pot stirring controversial podcasts or videos or posts or whatever. The hatred is mostly towards Trey and JT, because they are very young anglers, and that I've heard from so many elite guys and people that don't know what the hell they're talking about, that those guys are living in a gray area. And that's what this podcast is about. They're living in a gray area. And the whole idea is that those two had their families because they come from money, and I don't know what money they come from. I didn't ask to see their tax return statements. Apparently, all these other Elite Series guys that are hating them in these podcasts and these fans of the sport, apparently they all know what their bank accounts look like better than I do. But those guys had their parents buy them a bunch of waypoints later in the open season last year before the season was over for the opens, which was legal. That's not a gray area. That is illegal. Mm-hmm. I could have gone out and purchased waypoints for the Elite Series schedule once it came out all last year if I wanted to. It's not a gray area. That was illegal. It's going to be illegal moving forward. And honestly, I do like the rule. I think that everyone should be on a level playing field, whatever. So the idea is that those two anglers, specifically those two guys, have done extremely well because of that. And I think it's silly. Like I said, I agree with the rule change. I did have another Elite Series angler reach out to me that used to be on an angler committee with Kevin Van Dam. And the rule got brought up every year to take the info away from Opens anglers once the Elite Series was announced. And he said that KVD said, F them. They can have that old info, and that's not going to do them any good anyways. And they moved on to the next topic. So this has been addressed and thought about. And as much as the fisheries change from week to week, if you want to say that an angler is going to go dominate the Elite Series the following season for the entire year because of some information they gathered 12 months in advance is insane. So let's talk about some of the other gray area that I don't think is gray at all. You know, you talk about Trey fishing in a lock. People didn't like that. They're living in a gray area. Well, it's not a gray area at all. Trey asked if he could fish in the lock. They said yes. There's nothing in the Elite Series rules that says you can't fish in any lock. That does not exist. So he was not living in a gray area. If someone else asked the lock master if they could fish in it, and they said no, that has nothing to do with Elite Series rules. That is not a gray area. That is black and white. They said he could fish there. There's no rule that said he couldn't. He runs a bridge Trey runs a bridge at the Open at St. John's River. Trey admitted that he did not watch the briefing and that he didn't know that he wasn't supposed to run it. And is it a gray area? No. It was a rule break. It's black and white. That the rule was that he couldn't run it, and he ran it, and he got penalized. Is it against the rules not to watch the briefing? Yes. He also got penalized for that. There's your gray area. There's no gray area. It's black and white. So that's the gray area the rookies are living in based on those circumstances. And I don't see the gray area. You know, a gray area would be like some of the old guard, you know, they tell the old, you know, information tricks that everyone used to do 40 years ago where well, you can't tell me how the fish are biting, but I'm going to go put this piece of paper over here and you need to tell the piece of paper how the fish are biting and what they're biting on here. Like that shit used to happen. That's a gray area to me. This isn't a gray area that we're talking about.
I took some heat because I've talked about gray areas before, and I'm under the opinion that it is up to the organization, whether it be the MPFL, MLF, or BASS, to take question out of the equation. And there's 7 billion people in the world, and you can't leave it up to interpretation or what you think is right or you think is wrong. In a sport like this, I do believe integrity is very important because we are out on the water by ourselves. But every time something comes up, you have to either make it black or make it white, which is what they're doing, which is the post that you just posted here. That was a weekly thing that went out. It said active for the 2025 season. Open EQ anglers will have a no rules consistent with those with the Elite Series anglers. My problem with this has been I don't know why you can't just have a line that says you cannot, and MLF has this in their rules, has had it in their rules, at least when I fished it back in 19, you cannot pay or barter for information. Black and white. You pay or barter for information. But I also, on that email that you scrolled, JT and Trey had a truth verification test and both of them passed it. So every rule that is in the rule book, not every rule, but a lot of rules are in the rule book because situations come up. This is a young sport, 60 years old, and those are handled with and then dealt with as they come up. The stashing of gas cans, the along the way on long runs, the digging out of stuff, the block,
getting out of the boat.
It doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. If they didn't break a rule, you can't crucify someone for that.
Correct. And I mean, yeah, I think there's definitely opportunities for changes to be made for some other rules as well that would hurt some of the younger guys. As someone that I have a full-time job of creating content, I do have a family like a lot of these older guys that are complaining about them. If you want to, the biggest thing to me that would, have a detriment to the younger guys is taking away pre-practice, which, in the past, it's always been, kind of a tough line to walk with the organizations because you have guys that live on Gunnersville and the lakes across the country that wouldn't be able to fish it for the entire year then. But you put yourself behind the 8 ball when guys that don't have families or do anything besides fish are able to go for a month to these fisheries in the off season and learn where every rock is. Yeah, but that's not a rule either. I mean, and then we talk about some of these things that have come up. The anglers talking about, they must be getting illegal information because first day of practice, everyone's running directly to the best juice on the lake. It's like, so you were out there the first day of practice and you have a tracker on everyone's boat to see where they went to?
I have talked to several Elite Series guys who have had success on fisheries before, and they literally check some of the best stuff in the morning and guys have rolled up. But I think your point is, it is not illegal to get the information the way that the rules were stated.
Yeah, you're correct. It's not illegal, but at the same time, I don't think that guys that got information before the end of the open season are running to the best brush pile on Lake Murray first day.
Do you think there were a bunch of guys that got information before the end? Do you think that people purchased information and guys said, hey, I'm going to make the Elite Series. I'm going to try to get as much work as I can ahead, whether that be go to the fishery, talk to my buddy, buy a guide's waypoints. Do you think that stuff happened?
So I don't know what money was exchanged for any of it, but I am positive that some of it happened with asking for spots. I know that JT did. He told me straight up, of course I reached out to my buddies once I was leading the points before the end of the open season to get some information on these lakes. But then he also went and pre-practiced 2 or 3 weeks at every single place. I mean, and the thing was, like, there wasn't very many guys. There was 3 guys, Trey, JT, John Garrett, and maybe Robert G, but not even him, that went into the last term of the year at Harris Chain in October that were positive they would make it. Like, I sure as hell didn't. I didn't know until the last fish was weighed, and neither did at least 4 other guys. So that's why I'm saying when we're talking about the rookie class and the guys who are cheating, let's not beat around the bush and be afraid to say who's being accused of it, because the more we act like it's this whole group of young guys, the more it's just like, oh yeah, they're all cheating, they're all doing this. No, let's talk about specific examples and specific people. Have those people been truth verified, lie detector test? Yes, multiple times, and they've all passed. So, I mean, like you're saying, there's all these black and white rules in bass fishing.
I want everything to be black and white. I hate the gray, or people say, oh, I'm a gray. I am not a gray area guy. What I'm saying is it is black or white. And as the rule reads, gray is white right now. Either make it 100% white or make it black. I want black or white, not gray.
Correct. But what I'm saying is, like, when it's black or white, like it is with so many of our different rules, we have so many rules in our sport, then it's either the angler turns themselves in if they do something wrong, another angler sees them do something that turns them in, or you have your camera going that you're required to have the entire day. But besides that, we're basing everything else on a lie detector test. That's what everything else is based on your truth verification, and they've passed. So if we're going to act like it's important to have this truth verification lie detector test and the results say that they passed, what are we talking about here?
That's a good point. This would be
maybe we shouldn't have it, because then if people are still going to say that people are cheating, then what are we talking about?
This would be a good time to bring up the MLF invitationals for tournaments into the 2024 season. And we're looking at this, and it's an anomaly on the Elite Series to have all 9 of the 2023 Open rookies in the top 50, with Trey McKinney, the youngest ever, I think. I don't know if he's younger than when Bradley Roy joined or not, leading the Angler of the Year and 3 in the top 10. But they have 2 tournaments left over there. Jake Lawrence, Alec Morrison, Marshall Hughes, Colby Miller, and Drew Gill. 31, 24, 31, 24, and 21 happens to be their age, which averages out to 26 years old. Combined, the top 5 out of 150-man field, and you can go look at that. There's a lot of guys that have done a lot of fishing over there, have seven combined years of touring level experience. So their average age is 26. They average 1.4 years of experience over in the top 5 on the. So it's not a individual problem. What we're seeing is a seismic shift in the top guys at the Angler of the Year this year on both tours, and personally knowing several of those guys in the top 5 there, incredibly talented anglers with a lot of time on the water.
Yeah, so I mean, 26 means a lot different now than it used to, though, at the same time, because I mean, we talk about Drew Gill getting kind of involved in tournament fishing later than most guys, but he was still a college fisherman. 26-year-olds, those guys on that list, probably been fishing competitively in tournaments for at least 10 years at a very high level. I mean, obviously, high school, college tournaments, not the overall caliber of angler as the Opens field, as the Invitationals field, but extremely difficult to be successful at that level. And you get you fish around the country, you fish giant fields, you get exactly used to what's happening in all these tournament series that it just didn't exist when you and I were even there. So I mean, it's like saying when KVD where he was at when he was 35 with fishing experience and tournament experience is probably where these guys are when they're 26.
It's very apparent to me. I came up, I would say, in one of the first kind of like real college classes. Brandon Card, Chip Porcher was my partner. He fished the Bassmaster Elite Series. James Elam, that type. I mean, where it was like, holy cow, we have some college kids who fished collegiately that are now on the pro tours. This is so cool. And I don't think enough credit has been placed on the youth, high school, and college organizations for building anglers. The whole purpose of this, and it takes a decade to get this working and actually pumping out the caliber of anglers at once. But I remember covering this in 2008 to 2010, where it's like, guys, we're throwing these rookies to the wolves. The only guys we've ever had that have won really as rookies were Derek Remitz and Casey Ashley. Most of them are out after 2 years. They're broke. They're not getting sponsors. So they start this program. MLF was huge on it when they bought in 2019, but Bass has done the same thing too. So I think also when you're putting all of this on the technology of these young anglers, they wouldn't do it with LiveScope. Well, also these anglers, like you just mentioned, have been fishing juniors, high school, collegiate, running all over the country, fishing multi-day tournaments, learning strategy, learning how to fish tournaments. So when they get there, they're not intimidated. They know how to travel. They know how to fish multi-day tournaments. And now they're qualifying through 9 events instead of 3, which means that you're a well-rounded angler around the country. So the fact that the average age on the top 5 in the Invitationals is 26, and you have all 9 rookies in the top 50 on the Elite Series really is a tip of the cap to the process that these organizations have put into place over the last 20 years.
Yeah, 100%. It's really impressive. And so, I mean, it's kind of like we talked about with, live not being a great product to watch. I mean, the live's excellent. I love how the guys do, but at the same time, talking about fishing at a broad scale and how to consume tournament fishing, we got to make sure that when those guys are to the top level of the sport, we have a product, that they're happy about being a part of and can grow their brand, can make them successful financially to the point where they can do this for a long time. And I personally don't see that right now, but we got to figure out where we're going to go with it.
That's true. Are you good for another segment? We're 45 minutes in. I gotta.
Let's just go till noon. Let's do it.
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, Ben Milliken, who knows what else we'll get into. It's BTL on a Monday, May 20th. We'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Your early morning mentality is your every hour mentality. All gas, no brakes. Focus, purpose, power. Destined for the water, but confident everywhere else. A calming buzz before the storm, the truth of nature itself. You can't catch lightning in a bottle. There's a limit out there, but it's not with your gear. Unrelenting power delivery. Unparalleled weight savings. Keeping you on the water, whether you run a 9.9 or outscoping your best 5. In this rare air, there's power in the silence. It's a mindset, thinking only of the things that matter and freeing your mind from the things that you trust.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
In 2023, we became a household name in the crappie fishing world thanks to Power Breaks, the game changer. Hey, bass fishing world, buckle up, because you're next. It's going to be fun. Welcome to the next evolution of our product line, Power Breaks Sidekick, designed to install right on your shallow water acres. We are the first and only fishing brake company to offer a breakaway system. Just like with the Game Changer, the Power Breaks Sidekick has it as well. And it's not a matter of if you're going to need it, it's when. Power Breaks, the most durable fishing brakes available on the market today. Made right here in the USA with our rock-solid 2-year warranty. Hey, not all fishing brakes are built equally, and you owe it to yourself to find out why ours are different. Power Breaks Sidekick. Order yours today at mypowerbrakes.com. You'll be glad you did.
All right, welcome back. BTL on a Monday, talking all things with Ben Milliken. You want to just dive right back into it because I got another one that I'd like to get your take on.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm hearing guys are upsizing their treble hooks. They're seeing the fish on forward-facing sonar and then just straight snatching them with a jerk bait. Is that happening? Can that even be done?
Man, I wish it could, because I've been spending more time with the live scope probably than almost anyone that I know, and I can do it, but I wish that it was a possibility, because I'd be weighing 30 pounds a day.
Not possible.
I mean, I'm sure, like, you could probably do it if you were trying to, like, one out of every couple hundred fish you saw.
You think guys are trying to do that?
Really
Is there some guys that are convinced that guys are trying to do that? That's a serious question. Like, and what?
No, I don't think so. I'm like positive they're not, but I mean, yeah.
And we're talking open water fish and everything, the rest of it. So do you think there needs to be a rule where regardless of what bait it is or what state or whatever it is, there needs to be at least one hook inside the fish's mouth when you're throwing a treble hook lure? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't love it. Just it's like I've heard so many different people talk about on podcasts and stuff. I mean, you catch so many fish on a jerk bait, or you catch so many fish even bed fishing where the fish freaking sucks it in and it hooks them on the tip of their lip, or you have them on a jerk bait. They come up and eat the back hook and you got them, and you're fighting the fish and it surges one way, it catches a hook in the gill, and it surges another way and it rips the hook out of the mouth and stays in the side of the gill. And all of a sudden you got a fish that's not hooked in the mouth. I think if you want to make things black and white, yeah, you have to do that. You have to say that it's within the mouth. But I think there's some things we need to understand as fishermen, that we're trying to fool fish with an artificial lure. And so if you want to take that away, then you're going to take away and add more luck to a sport where we're trying to, have the most skilled person get the most bites on an artificial lure to trick the most and the biggest fish. That we're going to be taken away from that if we do the hook in the mouth. I think bed fishing, you're sight fishing a fish, it should have to be hooked in the mouth. But I also think, like the fish sucks it in, it goes through the gill and hooks on the outside. I think once it enters the mouth, whether it's hooked in the tail, out the gill, or wherever it is, if it's entered the mouth, it's in the mouth. I think that mouth extends the whole length of the fish if it comes out the gill and hooks them. So that's kind of how I would word that as well. But I don't think it's possible to do it consistently with a jerkbait or a treble hook bait to snag a fish. Even with an Alabama rig, I don't think it's even remotely possible to do it consistently enough to do well. But yeah, if you want to make things black and white, then you do only hooks in the mouth, I guess. But that's not what I would do.
Are you enjoying your experience so far on the Elite Series?
I wish I was enjoying it more. And I think a lot of that is because I put a lot of pressure on myself and I beat myself up when I do really bad. And so I think that's just, something I'll gain more with experience is to kind of stomach the terrible finishes and the terrible days in the water and the season's not over and your career's not over. That'll just kind of come with the experience. But, it's frustrating how good everyone is. That's the biggest thing. I keep coming back to that. What sucks the most is how good every single person out there is. And they are so hard to beat. It's so hard to beat one of those guys, and you have to beat 102 of them. When it comes down to it, that's really all that it is. And so I logistically getting around, we're making some changes. We're still trying to decide if we're doing the camper thing. We're actually going to go hopefully look at some campers today, but lining up camera boats stuff's a lot, and it's just a lot. And so I think, as we get kind of more into it, I'll be able to enjoy it more.
On the water, let's talk a little bit about on the water. You had a post where there are some people that were on both sides of the fence on this. You talked about Lake Murray, which is, you've never had a triple digit. It was, I think, would you finish right at 100th?
Murray, I got 85th.
Or 85th.
Yeah, I was 10th after day one. I got 85th. I did awesome on day two.
Yeah, you were like top 10. So you said sucked on day two. So here are some highlights from day one. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get on my better spots from the first day. Interesting dynamic to our sport, but then got to get better. What are the dynamics like on the water at the Elite Series level with so much on the line and multiple days of competition all on the same body of water?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely guys that are desperate right now, whether they be old anglers or just guys that are trying to stay on tour that will legitimately, if they see you catch them somewhere and they don't have anything else, they will have a better boat number. They will go fish that stuff. I know a ton of guys that wouldn't, and I don't know a lot of guys, and I don't know what they would do, but so it was a little bit of that, and that's fine. That's part of the sport. I should have found more spots. I didn't have any good spots besides one random point I pulled up to at 11 and caught 18 pounds off of it, and that was my day. So it was on me, not that I didn't find that, you put your power poles down in the dirt and wait for them to come up schooling for half an hour. I didn't get on that. Another thing that was frustrating that, it's been better at other places. There was, two big local tournaments on Murray that Saturday. That's frustrating. And those guys were cool about, like if they were going towards something and you were going towards something, they would veer off and go fish something else. But there's so many spots, Murray fish is so small. There's thousands of points and the fish is extremely small. There's so many spots where you just can't stop on because there's a local boat sitting on it. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to, the lake's off limits to all the public if we're having an Elite Series tournament, but that's a dynamic of the sport that everyone's had to deal with forever. That some guys didn't have to deal with, some guys did. And I guess that's just kind of how it shakes out. Law of averages, it'll play out right over time, right?
Veteran on the Elite Series that you didn't know prior to this year that you've been most impressed with through your interactions with him?
Hank Cherry, for sure. Just a phenomenal dude. Welcomed me with open arms from the first time I met him at the gas station before practice even started in Toledo Bend. been super cool to me since then. His wife's amazing. She was super nice to me when I met her at the Classic. Been super nice to my wife as well. So definitely Hank Cherry. And then, of course, I knew Lee very well before it even started. And Lee is as rock solid on and off the water before I was competing as he was before when I was in the opens and when he was supporting me there too. So, a lot of these guys where you're kind of, texting in your buddies and stuff when you're on the opens, and then you get up there and fish against them, and it's like the communication kind of shuts down a little bit. But yeah, those two guys really stand out to me.
Let's get into a little fishing stuff here. Obviously, you're a big part of Sixth Sense, and Sixth Sense, when it originally came about, in my experience, crankbait company, custom painted hard bait company. A lot of talk now about the hard bait industry with the changing style in fishing. How is it going to survive? Where is that headed? Your opinions on the viability of that, just based on what you've seen through Sixth Sense and fishing trends, and what is happening, could potentially happen, is going to level out in the industry when it comes to tackle company sales and longevity for entire categories of baits that traditionally are not used with forward-facing sonar.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, just like the anglers need to adapt and change, you have to be the same as a tackle company. And you have to move at that same velocity right now to make sure that you stay competitive and stay on top. And we've seen a lot of the older traditional companies not even be able to keep up with that speed because, it's a lot to get a mold made. It's a lot to come out with a new product to test and everything. Sixth Sense is, I'm not going to be humble about it, freaking just killing it with all the new products we're coming out with. And I was blown away when I talked to our R&D guys at the start of the season. They talked about how we're releasing 55 new products this year.
Good.
But then I think, since then, I think we're working on like 150 plus products right now, new designs, and those will all be on market. And some of them are like a few of them, it's like, that won't really have a place in my arsenal as a tournament guy. A lot of them are like, that's a really good, solid product. And then some are just like, this is going to change how I fish and catch more fish than anything that's on the market. So it's been cool to be a part of that. So basically what I'm saying is, like, yes, you have to change. You're not going to be able to come out with, a different type of square bill, three new colors of deep crankbait each year and survive in this right now. But we also keep in mind everything's cyclical. The fact that Tyler Williams is still winning and doing extremely well with a jig isn't an accident, and it's not because he's got some cheat code. It's because a lot of these methods still work extremely well. Shallow cranking, deep cranking, still extremely good. Jerkbait is as big of a player as it has ever been in the history of a jerkbait. Topwater will always have a place no matter what direction your sonar's facing. So yeah. And I talked to Casey, actually, the Sixth Sense owner, the other day when we were talking about, the direction of where we're going with things. And I was like, the deep cranking's never, it's works just as well now as it always has. And he's like, yeah, but part of the problem is guys aren't, hooking brush piles and breaking off as much anymore with scope because they can see exactly where everything is. So they're not buying 27 crankbaits, they're buying 3. And I was like, wow, I didn't really think about that, but that makes total sense. So there's a lot of dynamics to it, but I think that a lot of it's pressure, maybe more so than forward facing sonar even. And so a lot of these old clunky hard baits with loud rattles and stuff don't work quite like they used to for that reason as well. So yeah, you're going to have to make changes, and the changes aren't going to be that you have a big seminar talking about 3 new baits you're coming out with that are going to be great for forward facing sonar that weren't ever tested besides, for a week. The changes have to be, an all encompassing of talking to anglers actually going out and fishing the product, seeing how fish are reacting across the country and across the world now to see what products you need to come out with.
Jacob Wheeler was on BTL, and he said that he believes if you look at the arch of the jig head minnow technique, that he believes it's 2 years away from peaking, and then it will peak and become, I guess, less effective, for lack of a better term. Are you under that same belief too? I know that you spend a lot of time with that. Is that something that we will see a peak, fish become conditioned to relate to it, and then it's no longer, when it's the deal, it's no longer as effective as it has been for the past year and a half?
Yeah, that's everything is like that. But I think he said something that people need to really listen to in that podcast, where he talked about how baits with really subtle movements will last and be effective in their cycle way longer, and maybe forever, longer than other baits that are more aggressive, like a whopper plopper style bait, which still has a place. A shallow crankbait, big loud shallow crankbait, still has a place. But we start talking about these subtle movements and different things, and I think people kind of look at, we call so many things a jig head minnow or a minnow now, or hanging a minnow or whatever. And people need to kind of get away from that mindset and instead start thinking about how that bait is moving through the water column, and the type of vibrations and the type of movements that different styles of baits with different appendages, with different plastic densities, what they're doing, and then maybe apply that to some of their other baits and start thinking outside the box on why that minnow is so effective, and how they can create or tinker with other baits to make them equally as effective.
It wasn't that long ago that the glide bait was considered the most volatile bait in professional bass fishing. We've seen Polinick live and die with it. We've seen Carl Jacobson live and die with it. I think one of the reasons Ledoux doesn't even fish the Elite Series anymore is because he couldn't get the negotiator out of his hand for 3 years. Now we're going back. But I mean, dude, like literally, you'd see him on the water. The guy would throw. Recently, over the past 2 or 3 years, it seems like the glides, and even the big glides, we're not talking about the 5 or 6 inch glides, have become a staple in a lot of the anglers' arsenals across the tours. I know that is your wheelhouse. Talk a little bit about the acceptance in the big money top level tournaments and anglers using glide baits primarily, and then to supplement their catches, when it used to just be a couple of guys and it was the scariest thing that you could throw when the money was on the line.
Yeah, I think that's just kind of been the evolution of it, where we talk about the younger guys being so good, and the different types of baits that have become effective, and the experience that they're having in the off season, and making everyone better so much quicker with live scope and all this other technology. Knowing when to throw it, knowing when to put it down is still key, and it has to be a supplement at the top level. Even at Toledo Bend last year when I won, they were chewing it, they were eating it so good. I probably couldn't have won just with that. And that was like as good as I've ever seen it in a 3-day tournament. I couldn't have won it with just that. And so you really, really have to know when to pick it up, when to have it supplement, whether that be, it's not as simple as just, I'm going to go catch a limit and then I'll go try to get a big one with the big bait. And sometimes, you need to spend the first half hour of the day with the big bait and stuff like that. But, as a whole, yeah, you're seeing way, way more. And I like to see that. It kind of hurts me a little bit because this fish gets smarter every single time they see one. But I like to see it. There's so many small bait makers that make really good resin baits these days and are good with that. And that's a really sneaky thing that 3 of our top younger dudes, Trey, JT, and Tyler Williams are phenomenal, and really John Garrett too, with the big bait that they don't talk about a whole lot.
I think that is the perfect example of a bait that has, I don't want to use the word exposed, but it has become exposed because of YouTube. It's a big bait. It's hard to throw. When you watch someone catch fish on it and see it, you're like, oh, that's how they're doing it. That's how they're fishing it. I literally remember looking at Polinick's glide bait box at Bull Shoals when he was like, look at this. And he had some negotiators in there. He had some jointed claw 178 slow sinks in there. And he had, I think, an S waiver or 2 in there. And maybe it wasn't even S waiver out yet, but it was just like, he had like 9 or 10 of them. And he's like, look, like I'm catching some. I remember that was whenever I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that. And then he had like the little silencers on the inside of the silencer pads on it. And I went and I bought 2 negotiators at it. But it even then, like I couldn't go on YouTube and watch like how they were twitching it, getting them to react. So I think that that's a perfect example of a bait that's also exploded and has become way more acceptable as you watch more and more people online talk about it more than just outside the West Coast or the big bait aficionados.
Yeah, it's cool because I mean, we talk about, the technology of forward facing and mapping and side imaging, everything getting better, but really the content you can watch can cut the learning curve for you, and not just watching Bass Live. We talked about running the juice spots. Well, you could easily see those juice spots on Bass Live every year, but watching these guys with specific techniques that they're phenomenal at, you can go watch so many really, really good guys with the big glide bait that could never compete at the tournament level, but they are phenomenal with the glide bait and pick up so much information from them. And that's what I did really like 10, 15 years ago, even with a lot of tactical bass and old content, throwing little 6-inch Huddlestons, Ospreys, stuff like that. And that's what got me into it. So it does hurt me a little bit on the water these days now that everyone has access to that. But I do love seeing it. It's always cool to see different parts of the industry succeed.
I was a huge fan of Matt and then Tim as well. Like back when you'd go to the website and they would have the videos out, I'd literally take notes and eat that stuff up when they would talk about this glide baits. And
Yes.
Remember, I got my first like slow sink Huddleston because of it. And I remember putting it in the water and being like, they're catching them on this thing. It barely moves. But then there was that was the only thing that was out. And then I got on 10 Killer with Polinick one winter and he had one and he's like, no, dude, like that's what you do, but you creep it. And like, it's just was cool how like there's the information is just, it's readily available now. That's why guys are catching them on it. More guys than just the handful of guys who have spent decades figuring it out.
Exactly. And the cool thing I've always liked about a big bait too is it teaches you things that you would never learn with any other bait. And you can apply that to different ways that you're fishing. Like I can catch fish on a jig head minnow because of the way I've seen them react to a big bait and where they set up. I can catch fish on a jig, a Carolina rig, a crankbait because of how they follow, how they set up, or where those fish are set up that I never would have seen them because of the big bait. So yeah, it's been really cool to see.
One more fishing question, and it's something, it pains me to ask this because I've never been a sea rig guy, a Carolina rig guy, but I think you cannot overlook the fact that a lot of your key fish over the last year and 3 months have come on a Carolina rig. It's something that you throw a lot. I just kind of like to get your take on it, why you think it's so effective and why, as someone who's so on the cutting edge of what's going on, you still rely a lot on probably one of the oldest tricks in the book.
Yeah, it's I hated throwing it before I moved to Texas, but then for some reason I threw a swing head a ton because it's kind of a similar principle. And I would drag it super slow. Me and my tournament partner would do that a lot. We won a lot of money like that. But man, the Carolina rig, it's just going to keep getting more effective, and it's better all the time because it's so good for pressured fish. You're presenting a weightless bait. Basically, any bait you want to be weightless and have all the freedom of movement and flow and be natural through the water, but you're able to cast it a freaking mile with. You could stay back off fish that are super pressured. You can feel the bottom composition and know really when you get in that really hard, nasty, a shell bed or something like that, and really slow that presentation down. Yet your bait's just back there flowing around, doing whatever it does. So I mean, yeah, you'd love to be able to cast a weightless Senko 140 feet. Why do you throw a drop shot on to smallmouth in 30 feet of water? Yeah, they eat it because it's sitting up off the bottom, but there's no other way to present a bait that's this big without putting that 1/2 ounce, 3/8 ounce drop shot weight on it, but still have the freedom of movement there. And that's why it's effective. I mean, the more pressured places get, the better it's going to get, which is kind of funny because it's such an old school presentation.
Oh my gosh. Frank's watching. He said, "Amen." Bro.
Yeah. Frank knows. I caught
that's his first comment ever.
That limit I weighed at Murray, I actually caught him a lot of them on a Carolina rig, that 20 pounds, and I caught him on, get this, one of the best scope baits of all time that all these old guys probably hate, that only the new guys throw, a 1 ounce trap. Great scope bait, right?
Really? I mean, are you joking or are you scoping with it?
I mean, I was joking. Like, obviously not live scoping, but it's another
Well, I
bait
mean, wouldn't that
does.
work like a spoon almost, where you can?
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I was fishing in 2 feet of water, just burning the handle as quick as I
Oh,
could and
really?
stop and
Oh, so
go and
one of
stuff
those where
like
it's like
that.
gong, and then it just
Yeah.
crushes it coming out of nowhere.
Yeah, but I mean, they wouldn't eat a fluke. They wouldn't eat any finesse stuff. They wouldn't eat jerk bait, top water, glide bait, none of that. But that freaking lipless, I mean, you just
Mhm.
everything is always changing.
What do you need to work on now that you're 5 tournaments in, technique wise? Like, what is there anything that stuck out to where you were like, dude, the majority of the field is really good at this, and I need to work on this part of my game to stick around for another 20 years?
I don't know about technique wise, but I think mindset wise, they with the way that the Elite Series schedule is set up, and this year is not a great example, but it is somewhat. You have to be a phenomenal fisherman at bed fishing and shad spawn fishing, because you're going to have a ton of tournaments around that. And it's if like Lee Livesey could not pre-fish any of these lakes, and he could freaking roll out of bed and drive 100 feet down the lake and be like, oh, there's a pretty decent shad spawn going on. I need to cross the lake and go over to that set of cypress trees right there, and he'll go catch 16 pounds without ever being on that body of water. These guys are so freaking good, and some of them are just so fishy like that they can read those shad spawns, and they can go bed fish like Corey Johnston in 80-degree water in Florida and just know that they're in those areas and can pick those areas apart. So I think a lot of it's a mindset thing for me, on checking different things, checking for those shad spawns, and I guess spending more time looking for the bedding areas and stuff like that. Really, the shallow water shad spawn, bass spawn, bed fishing type stuff is where I need to get better for next year. That's pretty much done now, of course, but your entire start of your season, unless we have live scoping, early pre-spawn events, it's going to be about that. So
There are a number of guys.
I wasn't expecting as much as it really is.
And that's kind of that's a volatile time on the water thing. That's just your instinct.
It is
your instinct of and being able to trust your instinct in money situations to go do something that's not, hey, there is a fish right here that I could go catch, or this is where they're setting up to go. Let's go run over and check. That's a hard thing to do in tournament fishing unless you trust yourself to make good decisions.
Exactly. And that's a lot of practice too. It's practice strategy and how you're going to, set up your practice time. Because a lot of guys found that. Corey, the Johnstons found the bed fishing thing. And, a lot of the guys found the Hackneys, Christie's, all these guys with this phenomenal experience. They found that great shad spawn bite on the giant St. John's River fishery in 2 days of practice. They just, boom, went right to it. They found it. They dialed it in, and they had top 10s doing it.
Personally, for me, that's the most frustrating bite to find, is the shad spawn bite, because you can't practice it a lot. You have to have, that's the one bite that experience matters, because especially if you've just got a couple hours every single morning, like, you can't just fish the shad spawn 9 straight days, 12 hours a day and be like, I got the shad spawn down. It's like, you have to be there when it's happening during a very small window and understand it. And if you get it wrong, like, you're just like, well, I know where they're not shad spawning.
Exactly.
It doesn't help.
Yeah, you have to be there at the spot when it's happening. And it's like, you look at the St. John's River, it's not like you look at it and you're like, oh, the shad will spawn right there. I'm going to go there to start practice each day and see what the best bait is. It's like, you better just land on them. And so instinctually, and then history-wise, you have to know a lot. And that's something that I don't have right now. I need to get better at.
And the same thing, you mentioned a couple of the guys, you got to throw Cook and Benton in there as well. And I see who someone commented on, Clay commented, like, when there's only like 2% of the fish in the lake spotting and you're able to find them, just that time on the water, the intuition to know where to look to find either early spawners or late spawners or spawners where everyone else isn't even looking. That's an incredible talent too. And also kind of a risky proposition that you can only get comfortable with through experience.
Yeah, and when not to fish for them, just like the glide bait thing. I spent an hour and a half the second day at Murray when it slicked off and got sunny, and I had 4 to 6 pounders they just would not lock down on the bed. I thought that they were done spawning, and so I don't understand why they'll set up right there, then they'll swim down, they'll set up right here, and I'll fish for them, and they'll act a little interested, and then they'll swim away over to here, but they'll kind of set up. And that's just experience and being able to read those fish that I didn't have enough experience to move on from them. So yeah, it's a lot of experience and stuff, and it's everything. It's easy to say that, yeah, those young guys are good because of live scope. That's a really easy thing to say when there's so much more that goes into everything.
You don't have a lot of sponsor obligations. Like, you're not running around to all the company, I mean, based on your boat, do you? I mean, you're still able to spend a lot of time on the water, even though you're on the Elite Series here. Like, I mean, what would you say your sponsor portfolio is? You obviously have the 402 boat with the me and the Cougar and the whole 9 yards going on, but like red jersey, not much on it. Very unique setup for a rookie who I'm assuming you could have filled the jersey up if you wanted to.
Yeah. Really, my biggest commitment and time commitment is with 6th Sense and product development and stuff like that. So that's been nice. I can't complain with it. So really, I spend a lot of my time trying to film content outside of the tournament stuff. That's what I do in between. But yeah, I still, I kind of set everything up that way to kind of add little, ads into my videos for the companies, the Powerhouse Lithium, the Sea Light, the Mealy Marine, where I get my boat rigged, and Waterland Sunglasses, of course, that we're owners of with 6th Sense. But yeah, that's on purpose, because showing up to media events and stuff is not really going to move the needle for these companies a whole lot, or making kind of, aimless random Facebook and Instagram posts either. So yeah, that's something that's been beneficial for me, and I need to, stay with for a long time.
Thoughts for the remaining 4 tournaments, goals, dreams, hopes, ambitions?
I keep looking at the points and everything and thinking about the points and being consistent, but I need to understand that I didn't come on the tour to try to get 40th place or everything each tournament and cut a check. The $10,000 checks are nice, but I need to understand that if I don't do well, then I don't really care. I'm trying to freaking win these things. Thoughts, that's kind of like an all-encompassing thought, and I'm just going to send it. And if I don't make the classic, then it really doesn't matter to me. I would love to make it more than any type of tournament that there is. But, tournament by tournament, Wheeler is going to just be like last year and fish extremely small, I'm sure. Can't wait for that. It's the luck of the boat number. Can't wait, and so that's going to be interesting. I think it might fish a little bit better than it did in the Open, top to bottom. It's going to be another one where it's impossible to get on anything good, and everybody goes and catches 15 plus pounds. And Smith, I don't know what to expect with that one. All I know about that place is there's spotted bass and herring and pleasure boats. So that'll be interesting, having it the week before 4th of July. And then the last 2, of course, are going to, I think, set up and play extremely similar to how they did last year. And so, I guess we'll just have to see what the Bass Cat can do out in the waves. It'll probably be a little windy at both of those events, I got a feeling, and being in the right areas, because you're not going to be able to move around a whole lot. It's going to be important.
I go pick up the new Puma STS in 2 days here from Bass Cat. Thoughts on being in that for your first season? I know, like I said, you did a bunch of rigging videos on that and getting it going, but any tips on that, or anything that I'm looking forward to? I'm running the Cougar now.
Yeah, it's a great boat. I don't know if I have any tips. It's like running a dang muscle car out there that can also handle the big water and everything. It's such a high performance boat. You running with the Yamaha or Mercury?
Merc.
Nice, man. Yeah, I switched over to Yamaha this year, and I've been happy with that move. I think they're both great engines, of course, but the biggest thing for me with the Bass Cat's been the people behind it. The support of the tournaments, and talking to Rick has just been like next level.
He knows everything. He literally knows it. He does not forget anything that he has learned. A person who has bought a boat from Bass Cat, and I know Bass Cat's going through a lot of transition right now, but Rick is a national treasure.
He is. He really is. It's almost too bad that he can't have more of his ideas kind of implemented, because he's just,
There'd be some weird looking boats out there if it were.
There would be some weird looking boats. When we're talking about technology and stuff, Rick is not a super young guy, but he is on the cutting edge of, what's going to be the future of bass boats and how to implement the new technology and make it more efficient for anglers. So, the support from those guys has been just as important as the performance of the boat. So I've been super happy with it. And like I said, we're going to be bumping around a little bit towards the end of the year, but it will be interesting to see if those two places at the end of the year fish as similar as it seems like they would. And then it's going to be interesting to me. I'm kind of excited to watch this Angler of the Year race go down.
It's going to be the Johnston brothers, isn't it? And Trey?
I think Jordan Lee's might be the favorite. But I mean, you can't say that when Trey's leading by so much. But
yeah, that's true.
We're about to go to two places where Jordan's a damn local. And has fish ABTs and everything. And I mean, you talk about going up north, he's had a ton of success the last few years on MLF on smallmouth fisheries. So you can't say he's not the favorite to win it, but the Johnstons don't slip. They don't have bad events. They go catch them and win in Florida. They go up to Sturgeon Bay and against locals and crush them there, and they'll catch them at the last four events. I have no doubt in my mind that they'll probably get a check, both of them, every single event or top 10 it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to get in here, Ben, before I let you go?
I don't think so, man. I think we covered a lot of stuff.
You're welcome to stick around. I'm going to talk about the 9 other tournaments that went on. Or you're welcome to stick around, or I'll let you go.
Oh, it's all good. I probably got to go. I'm going on a little fun fishing trip. I need to hurt some after the way the last events have gone. So
I hear you. Well, I appreciate it. There you go, folks. You want to talk about the topics that are going on? We covered that in, and then I had to go back to the BTL roots and get a little education there in the fishing. So I appreciate it, Ben. Good luck in the second half of the season. And I really enjoyed that hour and a half with you.
Yeah, whenever you need me, man, and good luck to you the rest of the open season.
Thank you. Going for the W.
Congrats on the win on the St. Jude. We didn't get into that. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, that was so cool. That was just a bonus for a fantastic event. So,
well, got you on the right track. Carry that momentum, man.
That's the plan. All right, thanks, Ben.
All right, dude.
See ya. All right, there you go. The one and only Ben Milliken. Take our final break of the show. When we come back, we will dive into a lot of other stuff happening in the fishing world. BTL on a Monday.
Yes. Fishing isn't just a hobby, it's an obsession. Whether it's blazing hot or bitterly cold, bright sunshine, raining, or even snowing, someplace, somewhere, there's a fish that's ready to bite. And as the angler, you need baits that will catch the fish anywhere, anytime, no matter the conditions. From throwing topwaters to cranking the depths, know the baits to throw. Choose Spro.
Having confidence in your tackle while on the water is one of the main things to success, in my opinion. In the last couple of years with Denali, I've had just that. From anything from spinning rods, casting rods, tungsten products, even now to casting and spinning reels, I have the confidence to go out there and get the job done and know that all my equipment is going to handle it and do it just the way I want it. The thing about Denali is you've got great quality products at a great price point, so make sure you check them out.
It's definitely a lot colder today.
Man, I really need to make this cut. I need to make up points quick.
Positive mental attitude.
I hope they stay where I found them.
Are they even pulling water?
Too far. I hope nobody else.
Man, it's too windy.
The water's too high.
Avco, keeping you comfortable on the outside, no matter how you're feeling on the inside.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronics setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com. All right, welcome back, BTL on a Monday. All right, we got, like I told Ben at the beginning of the show, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events that have gone down over the past week and a half. We'll kick things off with MLF heavy hitters going on in Florida right now, and it is actually KVD's last tournament, folks. Like, he retired after the end of last year. He came back. He fished Red Crest. He's got heavy hitters. I don't know if he's going to do any of the team stuff for the remainder of this year. He might have a team event, but as far as like go out, catch them, have a chance to win, he still has a chance to go out and win, I guess, his last professional tournament, if you believe that it's going to be his last professional tournament ever. Let me pull the website up here. So Jordan Lee currently leading Group B, 63.04, a 7.14. Big Bass so far, Ryan Salzman, a 9.03. And this is only 3 days into this. But KVD is currently in second after his opening round on the Kissimmee chain, but he's 26 pounds above the cut line, which was only at like 14 pounds. So it's safe to say that KVD has at least 2 more days left. I would love to see a heavy hitters where KVD goes into the last day with everything zeroed and a chance to go out lifting a trophy with the confetti. That would be absolutely phenomenal, and I think a very fitting end. I know Strike King and the guys at Kings of Bass did a fantastic job on the video of Red Crest with him kind of fishing his last tournament. That was there on Lay Lake, where he made the back of Beeswax Creek with a half-ounce red-eye shad, famous in that Bassmaster Classic. Things did not go well for him there, but it looks like he's going to go out with a bang. Remember, he almost very narrowly won his final regular season BPT event up there on the Great Lakes to close out the end of last year. But I'll say it, I'm pulling for KVD in this. Next, let's go to the Toyota Series that was on Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. Guys, the Toyota Series has been, and I understand there's some weather and there's some other tournaments going on, but 100 boats, man, those things used to be like 250 boats, 100 boats in the Toyota Series on Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. We just saw what the BPT did in Oklahoma with Zach Burge winning. He had that big frog bite on the end. No surprise on who gets the win here. Chris Jones likes the muddy water, likes the he ain't going to be out there live scoping in the middle of the lake. Chris Jones gets his second Toyota Series victory. He's also won one on Grand. He also has 3 BFL victories, if my memory serves me right. And here's a dude, you want to talk about a local stick who's well-liked in the angling community, who does what he does, doesn't care what anybody else is going to do. And everybody knows that he's going to flip, frog, and throw a swim jig, whether he's on Grand, Eufaula, Fort Gibson, Texo, like all, he's just really good. The river, especially the Arkansas River on that. But for a local dude who hasn't, he's fished a lot at the regional level and fished some national events, but hasn't like been a touring pro for the duration of his career. He has 2 open wins, 2 Toyota Series wins. He's fished in 2 Bassmaster Classics that he's made through his 2 opens. He dang near won the Classic on Ray Roberts. Remember, he came in 3rd place there and is approaching $500,000 in career earnings between BASS and MLF and back in the day FLW, which is what he used to fish. So great to see Chris Jones get another victory there. Mike Corbishley, 44 pounds, 1 ounce, best the 124-man field at Lake Hartwell in the MPFL. And I'll say this about the MPFL. I was there for a media event. We split the time between a couple different lakes. Got to see the setup. I saw Fat Cat there. Ken Duke was in there. Got to see all the guys behind the scenes at the MPFL and their setup. And I also got to talk to a lot of the MPFL anglers as they were putting into practice. Saw a couple around the hotel, talked to them before that. There is a lot of positive morale and attitudes around that organization, to see them, how they set up, how they take care of their anglers, how the anglers talk about the organization. A lot of support behind that organization. and a very positive outcome. The fishing kind of sucked, but it's just that time of the year. The blueback bite was kind of done, and they weren't really out deep yet, and there were just a lot of small, skinny spotted bass. But that being said, also on Lake Hartwell, what they have done with that lake and that facility, turning it into, in my opinion, the number one destination for top tournaments in the country, as far as ramp, facilities, spectator, very tournament friendly. That is just an awesome facility to have. That's where we went out. They're off until Pickwick in July. We didn't get into this with Ben. Ben wanted like a NASCAR style schedule where the Elite Series just goes really hard for 3 or 4 months and then is off for 8 months. We might go back and revisit that topic because I think that's very interesting. Interesting to look. I mean, think about all the possibilities you could have with a longer off season, and then you put all the tournaments into a 2 or 3 month deal. So instead of stretching it out into hunting season, starting when it's super cold over the summertime when people aren't watching TV, if you packed it in, it'd be interesting to see if guys would really get behind it and follow it more. If it was just every week, boom, 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 those storylines, I think would develop faster and be easier to follow. The downside to that obviously would be you're fishing during a specific time of the year. One of the things I like that the MPFL did in stretching it out 1 a month in all of the different is you get the fall bite, you get the summer bite, you get the pre-spawn bite, you get the spawn bite. There's a bunch of different bites that you get. And when you try to condense it down into a 3 or 4 month window, the guys who are good at that time of the year tend to shine. Like he mentioned, the bed fishermen, the shad spawn guys really benefit from that Elite Series schedule. It's, heavy, and then goes up north. So they're off until Pickwick in July, halfway through their season. I talked a little bit about the MLF Invitationals. You follow we follow Alabama that went down. Jake Lawrence, that, like I said, the top 5 guys, Jake Lawrence, Alec Morrison, Marshall Hughes, Colby Miller, and Drew Gill, they average 26 years old. The top 3, it's their first year in the Invitationals, and then this is Colby Miller's second and Drew Gill's second as well. But 1.4 years of average experience, 26 years of age. I talk with Jody White over at MLF about this. I talk with Rick Harris a lot too. Very talented young class over at the MLF Invitationals. I know that is a league that is kind of trying to figure out exactly where it fits. Obviously, it's the feeder system for the BPT, and then the Toyotas are underneath it. It used to be the top level of FLW. Still has a $5,000 entry fee, 150 boats, but they're letting a lot of locals jump into, or anybody who wants to jump into 1 or 2 to fill the field for that. So these guys are going out and definitely will be a force to be reckoned with, regardless of where they're fishing. And then the One Bass Lake Havasu Open, 122 boats. Joe Arube, Junior out of Arizona, 57-31. He went 17, 22, and almost 18 for the win. Micah Jones in second. The boy Kurt Dove, the Birdman, having a heck of a year. He took a year off from the Bass Opens or the Invitationals or Toyotas to do this deal that Billy put together out west. He's one of those who's benefited from it. He's qualified for the Bass Nation Championship in 2025. He's making money out there. He's good in the Angler of the Year points. He finished third with 53-38. He went 18, 20, and 14. Lake Havasu City's own Roy Hawk coming in fourth. Good to see him back at the top of the leaderboard. And then rounding out the top 5, I've had him on BTL several times and also got to hang out with him when I went out to California a couple months ago. Todd Klein, former professional surfer from San Clemente, went 18, 17, and 16 for 51, 88 in that tournament. So, all right. Like I said, back for the week, we will have the Birdman himself, Kurt Dove, on. He's going to dive into what it's like making that drive out west 5 times this year to compete in that entire One Bass series. Working on a pretty cool guest for Wednesday. Don't want to announce that just quite yet. And then Thursday, back with another live episode with Frank Scalish. And then Guide Day, presented by Omnia Pro, returns on Friday. Thanks for everyone for jumping on. Thanks, Ben Milliken, for jumping on. Greatly appreciate it. Same place, same time tomorrow. We'll talk to everybody then. Later.